guys, welcome back to my channel. So today is the start of a very exciting reading vlog. I am going to be doing the next episode in my reading the highest rated books on my TBR. This edition is going to be fantasy books, which I am so excited about. So if you're unfamiliar, basically this series is where I choose 3 highly rated books on my TBR. Basically what I use to determine if something is highly rated is if it has above a 4.0 average rating on Goodreads. And usually I like to pick books that have at least 1,000 ratings because that makes it feel a little bit more accurate. But before we get into it, this video is sponsored by Book of the Month. So Book of the Month is a super popular and fast-growing online book service for readers. Their mission is to promote new and emerging authors and help readers discover books they love. Their team vets hundreds of books each month and gives readers their choice from a curated selection of new and early release titles, so you can spend more time reading and less time researching. Book of the Month is risk-free, and you can skip any month, anytime, and you will not be charged. Plus, they have the best price for new release hardcover fiction. Normally their service is $9.99 a month, but in December they are running a promotion where you can get your first book for $5. These are the 5 December books. We have People Like Her by LaRue, which explores the dark side of social media and being an influencer. This Close to Okay by Lisa Cross Smith, which is about a life-changing weekend between 2 strangers. In a Holidays by Christina Lauren, which is a Christmas time loop romance. The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins, which is a contemporary thriller retelling of Jane Eyre. And then The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans, which is a collection of short stories on the topics of race and US history. And if you've been around my channel for a long time, you would know that a lot of my favorite books are ones that I got from Book of the Month. So to get your first book for $5, which is a crazy deal, you can use the link in my description and the code BOOKWISH. And thank you, Book of the Month, for sponsoring this video. To show you guys the books that I picked, the first one I will be reading is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. So this has over 2,000 ratings and it is at a 4.35 average rating. And this is a fantasy book that revolves around this celestial event and the possible return of a dead god. I've read 2 other books by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is her, let's see, what is this series called? Sixth World series, and I really enjoy these, and I've heard nothing but amazing things about this book, so I am so excited. The next one that I will be reading is The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. This has over 120,000 ratings and it's at a 4.09. So this, I'm actually co-hosting a read-along for it, so not only will I be reading it for this video, but I'm also going to be doing a live show. And this is a book that I've been wanting to read for years. Basically what I know about the series is that it is based on like Russian fairy tales, and there is this like girl who was raised on stories of this frost demon in the woods. It really reminds me of Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik, which is one of my all-time favorite books. So again, very excited for this. And then the last book that I will be reading in this vlog is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This has 36,000 ratings and it is sitting at a 4.44. I believe this one was the highest. So this is a historical fantasy that follows this girl who made a deal with the devil and she can now live forever, but she is cursed with everyone forgetting her as soon as she leaves the room. Like if she leaves a room, everyone who was in that room forgets that she exists. So yeah, I am very excited for these 3 books. I feel like there's a really good chance I could give all of these 5 stars. So yeah, I'm gonna be reading these 3 books over the next week or 2 and finding out if they live up to their high rating for me. So the first book that I've started is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. So I have read 2 books by Rebecca Roanhorse, Trail of Lightning and then the sequel. I forget what the sequel is called, but they're the first 2 books in her Sixth World series, which is like a post-apocalyptic dystopian fantasy-ish series that I really, really like. So I'm excited for this. I feel like I even have higher hopes for this one just because I already know that I really like her writing and her stories, but this is getting so much more attention than Trail of Lightning. So I'm gonna read. Ooh, the end pages are maps. Look at this. And then the back side Nice. There's also a cast of characters. I love when fantasy books include that because I'm dumb and I get confused. I'm gonna start this, read like the first couple of chapters to get a first impression, and then I will come back and we can talk about the plot, what it's about, how I'm feeling. Okay, so I'm up to chapter 4. I read the first chapter of each of the three perspectives. We're following 3 characters, Serapio, Ciala, and Narampa. The first chapter is about Serapio when he is a little boy. His mother brutally mutilates him, sews his eyes together, all because she believes that he is going to be the vessel for some long dead god. The first chapter, honestly, is probably one of the best openings to any book I've ever read. It grips you immediately. So honestly, like if you're unsure if you're gonna like this book and you want to try it out, read the first chapter, because if that doesn't intrigue you enough to keep reading, I don't know what will. So yeah, already I'm like in love with Serapio. He's just like this precious little boy who has all of this like destiny put upon him, whether he wants it or not. The very first sentence is, "Today he would become a god. His mother had told him so." Then we have Ciala, who is a teak, which is basically like a human siren mermaid combination, and she's also a pirate captain. And when we first meet her, she is in prison, and then she is released by this rich lord who wants to hire her to get a ship and a crew and transport this man across the sea to the holy city before the eclipse. Then we have Narampa, who we learn is from the Maw, which is like the slums basically, and she had this drive to climb herself out of the slums and up into the priesthood. So she like climbed the ladder, made her way up, became a servant, and then caught the eye of the sun priest, who is like the top religious person of this religion, and she becomes his successor. So now she is the new sun priest. And basically, from what I know about the synopsis, this whole book is leading up to this celestial event. There's going to be an eclipse, and there is a prophecy that a long dead crow god is going to be reborn during the eclipse. So I believe that that is who Serapio is like becoming a vessel for. There's a very devout group of people who still believe in the old gods, but this new religion that came through, that is the one that Narampa is the sun priest for, they like wiped out the old gods. They wiped out people who believed in the old gods. So yeah, so far I'm intrigued. I like all 3 of these characters. I'm also like trying to keep placement of the timelines, because each of these 3 chapters took place at a different time. The first chapter was 10 years before Convergence, which I think is what the eclipse event is that we're leading up to. So the first chapter is 10 years before, then the second chapter is 20 days before, and then the third chapter is the day of Convergence. I'm just trying to make sure I have the timeline kept in my head. Sometimes I forget, like if books have like dates or specific times, I forget to look at them and then I get all mixed up. I finished. I did not mean to stay up all night tonight for reading this book, but I literally could not put it down. I don't even know what time it is. It's probably like 3 a.m. I loved this. I'm giving it 5 stars. Oh my god. Let's talk about my thoughts if I can coherently do this. Maybe I should wait for morning, but I feel like I should talk about it while it's fresh in my mind. I loved all the characters, but specifically Serapio and Ciala, top tier, especially Serapio. They're in my like top 5 favorite characters ever. He specifically might be my new favorite character ever. I don't know. I love them both so much. Serapio is like, how do I describe him? I'm gonna paint you a picture. Picture this. A man. His eyes are sewn shut. His teeth are sharp and dyed red. He wears all black, a cloak and a hood. He's very scary looking, but he's so sweet. He's like a cinnamon roll. He also went through a ton of training and could literally kill you with his pinky finger. Like, he is a cinnamon roll who could kill you and is also the stuff of nightmares. He's an enigma and I love him. Like, there were some moments that he genuinely terrified me. And then he would go back to being like the sweetest person ever. I loved him. Then we have Ciala. Like I said, she's a pirate captain. She's also a siren, so she has magical abilities when she sings. She's also bisexual and an alcoholic. We love a messy bisexual. They also had a romance with each other. It's very like subplot romance, but their chemistry was so good. I loved them together. They really vibed off each other and like played off each other really well. Also, Serapio, since he's like the vessel for the crow god, he has this very special connection to crows, and he can do that thing from Game of Thrones where Bran can like go into the mind of an animal and see through them. He can do that with crows. So even though he is blind, he can use crows and like transfer into their minds to see things. He can also use crows to do his bidding. Like, he could just snap his fingers and a massive horde of crows will descend and attack, and it is so scary. So yeah, we have those two. Then we had the other main character, Narampa, who I really liked her, not as much as the other two, but her storyline was very interesting because I love when there are religious undertones or like heavy overt religious themes in fantasy books. I find it so fascinating. And so her whole storyline was basically the fact that she is this sun priest. Her ascent into sun priest was met with a lot of controversy because she was from the slums and she had a very like rapid rise that a lot of people didn't agree with. So a lot of the other people, the other priests on her council, are conspiring against her. Also, the religious faction that she's in, very oppressive. They had previously massacred a huge group of people who worshipped the old gods to make an example out of them. And so her storyline through the course of the book is kind of realizing that this religion that she's devoted herself to isn't exactly what she believes in, and there is corruption and evil amongst the people that she thought were good and just. So that storyline is very interesting. So we have like this very political, religious storyline, and then with Ciala and Serapio, they're basically on like a pirate ship traveling adventure quest. So I really liked just how expansive this story was and how many different things there were. I feel like there's something for everybody. Like, there's romance, there's action, there's pirates, there's political intrigue, training montages, because you get flashbacks to Serapio. He had a bunch of different people coming to train him for specific things. There's magic, prophecies, gods, fantastical creatures. There's like giant birds that people ride. There's a lot going on for this book, and the actual world is really interesting. So it's based on civilizations of pre-Columbian America. Specifically, the Holy City is really interesting because it's all these different like factions that are connected with sky bridges. This also had one of my favorite storytelling techniques where you have multiple storylines that are separate, but they're all heading to the same place, and it's kind of gonna be either a really great weaving and they're gonna like come together in a beautiful way, or it's gonna be like a crash collision course and they're gonna explode and cause chaos. So then it all comes together. The final scene is probably one of the best final scenes I've ever read. So not only did this have one of the best openings of any book I've read, it had one of the best endings of any book that I've read. The ending was so badass and like insane. I reread like the final 30 pages twice because I was just like, she did not. It was crazy. This also had a lot of really casual queer rep. So like I said, Ciala is bi. There was also a trans side character and a non-binary side character who used ze/zer pronouns. This is a new favorite book of all time. I'm in love with this. Like, I want to reread this already. That never happens. I never want to reread books, but I want to reread it right now. Okay. I don't know if I already said this, but I'm giving it 5 stars. I'm just blown away. I thought this was amazing. Definitely, if you like fantasy, this is a must read. Honestly, I feel like people who don't even like fantasy could enjoy this. Like I said, I feel like there's something for everybody. So something I do in all of these highest rated videos is I assess whether or not I think that the book lives up to its high rating. Obviously, I believe this lives up to its high rating. I think it could even be higher. I think the rating could even be higher. It's incredible. Now, I'm gonna go get some sleep because it is like 6 hours past my bedtime. And I'll come back to you guys tomorrow with the next book. Okay, so it has been been a couple days since I last checked in. I am about halfway into The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. So like I said, this is a Russian folklore fairy tale inspired book. It takes place in this small village in Russia and follows this family. We basically have this married couple who have a bunch of children, and the wife is now pregnant with another child, and she believes that this child that she's pregnant with is going to be very special, is going to be very important. So it's very important to her that this child is born, even though this is a very complicated pregnancy. And she ends up dying in labor, and her daughter is born, and that is the main character, Vasilisa. Vasilisa? I almost said Vaseline. We also learn of this like folk tale story about this frost demon who lives in the woods, and he is very feared by the townspeople. And so the people of this town, they believe in all of these little spirits, and unbeknownst to everyone, Vasilisa can actually see them, and they're like little creatures that are all around. Like there's one in the oven, there's one in the horse stables, like they're just all these little like spirit creatures that she can see and talk to. And then her father, thinking that Vasilisa needs a mother figure because she's kind of wild, she's kind of different than everybody else, he goes to the Russian palace to find a wife, and he comes home with this woman. So her father brings her back with him to this little village to be Vasilisa's new stepmother and take care of her. What's very interesting about this book is the contrast between Vasilisa and Anna, her new stepmother, because they are both the only two characters in the story that can see these spirits. But because of the contrast in the way that they were raised, since Vasilisa was raised in this really small community where they still believed in like the old tales, and then Anna was raised in the palace where Catholicism has come in, and she was raised to believe that these spirits are demons and the devil and evil. So she really fears them, while Vasilisa thinks of them as like friends. And I think the contrast between the two of them is very interesting. I also love the way that the story is being told. It really feels like I'm like curled up in a blanket and my grandmother is reading me this fairy tale. I'm also kind of surprised because I've heard about this book for so long. I kind of knew like the basis of what it was about, but I'm surprised with how much we're following Vasilisa's family as opposed to just following her, because honestly in the parts that I've read so far, we're not really even following Vasilisa that much. She's still like a really young child, and we're more so following her family. I'm sure that will change as the book goes on and as the series goes on. She'll become more of like the center role, but right now it's really about her family, all of her siblings, and a lot of it right now is about her father. But I really like how much this has a huge family aspect to it. I also love the amount of scenes that we're getting in this dark forest, because I've mentioned this before, but I love forest settings, especially like magical forests or dark forests or like evil forests. I just love it all. And I already love the frost demon. I'm a stan. He's probably gonna end up being like a terrible villain, but for right now, I'm in love. Also, this is like totally unrelated, but I wanted to show off my outfit because I'm like obsessed with it. It's so cute. It kind of gives me like prep school. One of the students was just murdered and I'm gonna solve the case. Alright, so I finished The Bear and the Nightingale. I think I'm gonna rate this 4 stars, 4.5 stars, 4 stars, somewhere between 4 and 4.5. I really loved this. I thought it was a great start to a series, but I do feel like I'm going to enjoy the rest of the books in this series more than this one. So I'll start with the things I liked, other than everything I've already said. I loved the little creatures. Like all the different little creatures were just so much fun and added this like really humorous nature to the book, especially because I was just like picturing them all looking really wild and crazy and having these like really funny voices. Like there was one creature that lived in the oven that was like, probably my favorite. I also found it really interesting how do I explain this? Katherine Arden has a way of introducing a character to you and immediately getting you to sympathize and be on that character's side and then later see that character making terrible decisions and becoming a villain. So I feel like all of the villain characters in this book, when we first meet them and you don't know that they're on this path, you empathize with them and you understand them and you kind of like them. Also, the writing is just beautiful. The only book that I read by Catherine Arden was her middle grade book, which I enjoyed, but it didn't have like the prettiest writing. This writing was so beautiful, so lyrical and atmospheric. It really felt like a fairy tale. Now, for the negative, the reason why it's not 5 stars, I would say that if I broke this up into thirds, the first third was super interesting. I loved like meeting all these characters and kind of getting a feel of the vibe and the story. The last third, also very interesting. There was a lot of like crazy plot twists and things that happened that were just so interesting and I was like on the edge of my seat. But then there was this middle third that was really boring. Not much happened. It kind of meandered and I was bored and I felt like I was really like trying to get through it. That's why it's 4 stars and not 5, but I still really loved it. And like I said, I feel like I'm more excited for the next book because the way that this ended, I'm so excited about the direction that the story's taking. Do I think that this book lived up to its high rating? Yes, I do. However, I do understand why this is the lowest of the 3. This one is barely above 4.0, and I actually think that it became above a 4.0 average rating recently because I remember like a year ago when I was thinking about doing this video, I looked at this book as an option and it didn't make the cut for whatever my criteria was. The other 2 books in this series, however, are in the high 4s. So I would say compared to like Black Sun, I understand why this is like a lower 4. Which if we're comparing the 2, which I wouldn't in general because they're so different, but just in terms of like their ratings, I feel like Black Sun has a lot of mass appeal, whereas The Bear and the Nightingale, I feel like is written for a very specific type of person. People who like slower, meandering stories that are more character focused and don't have a lot of plot. So I feel like I can understand why this is in the lower end of the 4 as opposed to like Black Sun. But yeah, so far so good. 2 books down, 1 to go. So now I am going to be starting The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I said that really weird. V.E. Schwab? What did I say? Schwab. So this is a historical fantasy that follows this girl who makes a deal with the devil so that she will have eternal life, but the only catch is that now everyone forgets that she exists. So anytime she meets somebody, as soon as they leave the room or she leaves the room and they're no longer in like visual sight of each other, they completely forget that she existed. So this book follows her and her life over the course of, I believe, 300 years. So yeah, I'm excited. I've been hearing a lot of stuff about this book, a lot of hype, a lot of opinions, and I'm very intrigued to know what I think. Also, out of the 3, this one had the highest rating, which I don't really know if that's an indication if this will be the best one because V.E. Schwab does have like a very hardcore audience that I feel like the other 2 authors don't have. So I don't know, we'll see. I'm excited. All right, so I am like, hold on. Oh shit, I closed the book and I lost where I was. I think I was like 100 pages in. I got to part 2. I'm loving this already, you guys. So basically, Addie is this girl from the late 1600s France, and her family was forcing her to marry this like this not great man that she didn't want to marry. One of her like neighbors or like family friends prayed to these old gods and said, you know, like if you need anything, pray to these gods, but be careful. Do not pray to the gods after dark because you won't like who answers. So what does Addie do? Of course, she runs into the woods on her wedding day, starts praying to the gods to save her and to get her out of this situation, but she doesn't realize that as she's praying, the sun has gone down. So now she's praying to something else, and out comes the devil. So he grants her wish. She says she'll do anything. He gets her out of her marriage. He makes it so that now she lives forever and everyone will forget about her. And now she can go on with her life and do whatever she wants. But there's a lot of limitations and catches to it, of course, because he's the devil. So this is taking place in two timelines. One is in the 1700s in France at the very beginning of Addie's new life, where she's learning to live this life where everyone forgets her. And then the other one is in New York in 2014, where she ends up meeting this guy in a bookstore who remembers her, and he's the first person in 300 years who has remembered her. And so far this is just like so interesting, and I love Addie so much, and I didn't know that this was gonna be how her character was. Like, she is so petty in the best way. She's basically living this horrible life where she can't just like buy a house because people will forget that she lives there and thinks that she broke in. She can't like create any art or make any marks on the world. She can't even speak her own name. Nobody remembers her. She's living this really horrible, hollow existence for the sole purpose of spite. Because the devil says, as soon as you want this to end, all you have to do is give me your soul and this will end. She hates the devil so much and is so petty and spiteful that she's willing to live this horrible life for centuries just out of spite, just so he can't get her soul. And I love that. There's this one line in particular that I'm just like obsessed with. It says, "He has given her a gift tonight, though she doubts he knows it. Time has no face, no form, nothing to fight against. But in his mocking smile, his toying words, the darkness has given her the one thing she truly needs, an enemy." So yeah, I'm up to part 2. I'm gonna continue reading more of this today. I don't think I'll be able to finish this today, but I'm just loving this so much. I'm actually kind of surprised. I felt like out of these 3 books, this would be the one that I don't know what I was expecting going into it. I'm just really loving it. I finished The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and I'm giving it 5 stars. I am so shocked at how much I loved this book. I feel like, again, similar to The Bear and the Nightingale, this is going to be for a very particular kind of reader. It is 100% a character-driven story, and it's very purposefully slow. And I really loved how, since this follows Addie over the course of 300 years, you really feel that amount of time. And there's a lot of things that are kind of like repeated a bunch of times, scenes and interactions, because that's something that Addie actually goes through. She actually has like the same conversations and the same encounters with people all the time because they're constantly forgetting about her. And I really loved how we switched back and forth between the past and the present, because it was very interesting to see the stark contrast between Addie when she's first learning how to live this new life and kind of not timid, but just very not confident, as opposed to like the current Addie who is like a boss bitch and like takes whatever she wants. I also found the relationship between Addie and Luke, who is the devil, to be so fascinating, because I felt like they were kind of playing this endless game of chess while I'm just over here still trying to figure out how checkers works. And I also really loved Henry as his own character, but also as Addie's love interest. I feel like they complemented each other very well. They're also both queer. I can't remember specifically if there were labels used, but they both have expressed multiple gender attraction. The writing was also just so beautiful, and I almost feel like if I didn't know this was V.E. Schwab, I would have never in a million years guessed that this was her writing it. Not to say that I don't think she's capable of writing something this beautiful. I just don't think it feels like the other books by her that I've read. It feels like something totally different and almost like the story that she was always meant to write. Like, this feels like it suited her writing style so well, which I know that she's mentioned that this is like the book of her heart, which totally makes sense. You can really feel just the amount of passion that she had for this in the writing. Yeah, I loved it so much. Okay, so do I think this book lived up to the high rating? Yes. I'm very curious now to like go in depth and see like other people's reviews and what other people have said, because I've really been ignoring most people's opinions about this book. But now I'm really curious how other people felt, because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like this is a book people are either really gonna love or they're not, and there's not gonna be a lot of in between, but I loved it obviously. So once again, this video was very successful. I loved all 3 of these books. I had 2 5 stars and a 4 star. These 2 are definitely starts to series that are going to be my favorite, and then this is definitely being added to my list of favorite standalones. I will say though, since this was a reading highest rated fantasy books, these two were very light on the fantasy elements. I would say that they're more historical books with slight fantastical elements as opposed to Black Sun, which is like straight up high fantasy. So for anyone who's maybe commenting like, those aren't fantasy, I agree slightly, but on everything, like on Amazon, on Goodreads, on Barnes & Noble, they're all listed as fantasy. So for the sake of this video, I'm calling them fantasy, even though I think that these two are definitely more historical with fantasy elements. You guys should let me know in the comments what genre or theme I should do next for reading highest rated books, since I've already done 2 romance ones and now a fantasy one. And thank you guys for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye!